Is there hate between Jamaicans and Black Americans? Only in the mind of very few. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is G-Man Allah. My artist name is P Funk City G. I'd like to welcome you to Rebel Life, and this is the naked truth.
Bad people, stop it! The Jamaican accent is not an African dialect. History of education, I have a bone to pick with you. Why are so many Jamaicans ignorant of their own history? Why so much dunce people in my comment section? Oh my God, people, stop it! The Jamaican accent is not an African dialect. The Jamaican accent, like everything associated with modern Jamaican heritage, is in fact the byproduct of the cultural melting pot that our motto embraces. In terms of cadence, it's most similar to an Irish accent.
I've been shook enough now, to be honest, since the racing is a bit tired now and the legs are...
So if you never know, now you know. Again, out of many, one people. Number one, Jamaica is not an African nation. It's not a black country. We identify as an ethnically diverse society. People, please just stop it. Out of many, one people, Jamaicans. We do not hyphenate and we do not encourage separation by race.
A video going around of what appears to be a Chinese Jamaican woman really coming for black African people from Jamaica, particularly those of us who live a foreign, in relation to issues of blackness, Africanness, and the possession of a passport or lack thereof. People are sending me this video and ask me what I have to say about it. And the reality is, I have nothing to say to she. Any non-African person from Jamaica or anywhere else in the world that has a problem with Africans from Jamaica, yard or foreign, asserting our Africanness and our blackness, that a feeding problem. This is not something that we should feel the need to justify, apologize for, or even explain, especially when you consider the colonial and neo-colonial experience of African Jamaicans and how that results in the migration of African Jamaicans, as well as the extent to which the colonizer attempted to sever us from a sense of heritage and a sense of culture. That alone tell you everything what you need to know about the mentality of the smaddy will make that the video there. So when I have nothing more to say about that except to affirm the teachings of Marcus Mosiah Garvey when Africans of his time were being challenged in relation to our affirmation and assertion of racial and cultural pride. Let contrary sentiments and cross opinions go to the winds. We are entitled to our own opinions and not obligated or bound by the opinions of others.
I'm so tired of this narrative. It is simply not true. And I don't know where it started. I don't know who is trying to create this propaganda that Africans don't accept us in the diaspora. It is not true. A great majority of them love us and embrace us and want us to come over there and connect with them. Sure, you have a few that may be saying, oh, don't come over here. But I mean, it's one and two, and most of them are just not in their right minds. Just like you have piece of shit Jamaicans, but I'm not going around and saying, oh, Jamaica is hell because you have a few people who aren't very nice. Check the comment section of the last video that I posted. It is full of comments from the continent, all over the continent. Even on Instagram, I have 50,000 followers on Instagram. About 90% of them are Africans. Africans love us, especially Jamaicans. Okay, maybe they don't like Black Americans so much, right? You can understand, I love my Black American brothers and sisters, but y'all are hard to deal with sometimes, especially when you come to other places where other African people are. You come with your entitlement, you come with your attitude, you come with your complaining. Like, it's very difficult to deal with y'all because you're American. And that's just the truth. But we love in the same way, but it's just hard to deal with. But Africans love Jamaicans. They love Jamaicans.
How did Black Americans get involved in this conversation? And better yet, where's that energy for the Chinese woman? I've been over in Jamaica 15 years, and I've seen the relationship between Chinese people and black people in Jamaica, and it's not, they coexist. I always say that the Europeans, the British, they come with a gun and a Bible, and the Chinese come with trade. They just want to be trade. They don't want you to worship their gods. They don't want you to. They're not going to force you to. You know what I mean? They want to make trade, and they're going to have households with their culture, and they don't mind at all how you live your life and your culture. So, with that said, I've seen, probably 90% of the time, a Jamaican person is working for a Chinese person. If there's a work relationship between the Chinese and the Chinese and our Jamaican brothers and sisters. And so what happens is that they have the upper hand. They're in control, so they get the utmost respect. Chinese get the utmost respect. There's nothing. It would have to be a small percentage of the products that come into Jamaica that don't come from China. The American products are too expensive to be sold pretty much outside of America. So, Chinese get a certain percentage of every dollar, spent in Jamaica, because of, coming from China, coming into the hands of, Chinese people here, and then they distribute it to the, our brothers and sisters who, open up shops and sell drinks and whatever. But in town, they have the big stores with the cheapest prices. So that's how they're able to control things. And I've seen that, the Jamaican Chinese relationship, and I know, like one store in particular in Sav, at the Chinese store right next to Ping's, it was like that Chinese lady was so disrespectful to black people. You would think that she was a racist white woman in the 20s. It was disgusting how she was treating my brothers and sisters. Not even the co-workers, but the people that's coming to the store. It was disgusting. You know what I'm saying? So, it's hard. I actually stopped going to that store. You know what I mean? Because I didn't, I live by the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And, he taught us, we love who love us. You got no love for those who don't love us. Simple as that. Ain't no turn the other cheek. You know what I mean? The respect is number one. If you respect me, I'm gonna respect you. And even if you don't respect me, I'm gonna respect your potential to be higher and greater than who you are. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna love my enemy. I don't have any enemies. But I'm sure I am the enemy of some people out there, So anyway, that relationship is the Chinese is running things here. They have the upper hand, you know what I mean? And so it kind of threw me off because, that sister had nothing to say about the Chinese lady. She was focused on the connection with Africans, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that we are all black. We're black people, And once we start saying I'm Jamaican, I'm African American, I'm FBA, I'm ADOS, I'm Nigerian, I'm Egyptian, we falling right into the white man's hand. There's only two people in this world: black people and brown people. Black people and white people. And under black is all colors, right? So under the black we have the yellow, the red, the brown, and the black. It's as simple as that. So once we understand that, then we look at the world different. So when I came to Jamaica, I didn't come, seeing Jamaicans. I saw my brothers and sisters. You know, thanks to the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You know, so you know, there's 41 million. There's 41 million black people in Jamaica, in America. Black American descendants of slaves. There's about 1 million Jamaican people in America. So there's no way that they can have anybody can have a grasp on what black people are. Because black people are everything. We're rich, we're poor, we're middle class, we're upper class, we're clergymen, we're pastors, we're imams. So, you know, I'm trying to think of the word for the Jews, the Jewish leaders. I forget what they call them. I'll probably put it at the side if I, you know, want some editing. But you know, we're everything. We're nice. We're evil. Some of us are evil. Some of us are selfish. Some of us are competitive. Some of us are full of pride. But then there's some of us that are not. But what comes down to it is that we're the same. Black people, Jamaican people, Cuban, Haitian people, Nigerian, we're the same. But once we separate, that's what the bankers want. That's what the Caucasians want. They want the separation because they're competitive, right? And I'll deal with that, you know, in another video this week about the competition. But the nature of competition is to put somebody in a position that you don't want to be in. So that by the nature, it goes against the golden rule and it's unnatural. But the thing is, when we take that competitiveness out, then we can see me and you and me and them and me, and you know, I and I, like Ross said, I isn't everything. It doesn't exist unless it's in your mind. So that's how we have to, you know, that's how I look at life. So you know, so I would have to say, from my point of view, there's no beef. There's no beef with black people and black Americans in Jamaica, you know, black Americans I mean, like, but not to be rude, just to make it true, but black people don't care. You know what I'm saying? What nobody think, you know what I'm saying? You know, so it's like, you know, black people in America got tough skin. You know, we've always grew up with hate. You know, being here in Jamaica is like, it's a brotherhood. It's as like the Chinese lady said, out of one, many people. America's not like that. So, you know, from little kids, like once I moved to Jamaica, I realized that like all cops aren't bad. Like the cops here, you know, some people here might hate the police, but I got no problem with the police. I love the police. You know what I mean? Like I don't like when I'm in the States and I'm in a car and we pass, you know what I mean? The cherries sitting in it somewhere. I'm sitting there like, I hope they don't see us and come out. You know what I mean? Mess up my day and I could end up, you know what I mean, for whatever reason, locked up for an hour or 3 months or 4 years. You don't know. Yeah, and I never get that feeling out here. I love Jamaica. I love the people of Jamaica. I love the black people of Jamaica. I love the Chinese people too. You know what I mean? But there's some that are wicked, just like there's some that are wicked Jamaicans and there's some wicked black Americans. You know? But there's some great Jamaicans. You know, I always say, you know, like, you know, in America, like, cats, you know, black America, me personally, and in my house, we were rooting for Usain Bolt. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I wanted him to win more than, you know, the black. I don't even remember the black racers that was racing at that time. You know, when he first like came on the scene in America in the Olympics. And I wanted that man to win. You know what I mean? And he was so beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Like my son could do that great. You know what I mean? That was his move. You know what I mean? But it was beautiful to watch because that was a black man dominating. I didn't see a Jamaican dominating. I was a black man. You know what I mean? I never forget when one time we were in the studio, just, getting back to like my bad boy days. I was, we were watching the Olympics, and the Olympics was on screen while we had a session. The session was going on. So anyway, Puff was like, he said, like, it was the Million Man March. No, it was either the Million Man March or the Olympics. I think it was probably the Olympics. And, they were racing and, and it was like, they weren't even Americans, you know what I mean? It was like, but there were some black people from another country. He was like, he was so happy, He's like, yo, the black man is God. And I said, indeed. He said, what? I said, indeed. You know what I mean? So by that time, he knew who I was. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, and I knew who he was. I knew, like, the deeper understanding of who he is. He has knowledge of self. He knows what the Rasta knows. He knows what the Muslim knows. There's some Christians who are true Christians, and not just Christians that you just say they relate to something, but in the mind. Christians in the mind and in the heart. And the Jews that are in the mind and the heart. The Hebrews that are in the mind and the heart, and not just a category to fall me in. Because I'm all of that. I'm Christian, I'm Jewish, I'm everything that a black man is. Simple as that. The first time that I came across even the notion that there was like any different, you know what I mean? Because, my mother was, she wasn't racist at all. She wanted, she was into black power. You know what I mean? She wanted us to grow up around black people, feel comfortable around black people. They had been living in a black town with a black mayor and all of that. You know what I mean? And I appreciate her for that. But the first time I dealt with anything, being from Plainfield, New Jersey, was I was hanging out with some young ladies, about 17. I was about 17 to 18, because Elizabeth, anybody who know my story about the music and everything, we were doing parties. So anyway, Plainfield, Elizabeth, like from Elizabeth on, we really didn't deal with Newark too much because it was a lot of hate. Like Newark was like, they thought everybody that didn't live in Newark was corny, they was dumb and fool. You know what I mean? So I never really dealt with Newark. I would go to, I spent more time in New York than anywhere else. But anyway. So from Elizabeth down to South Jersey was, our territory. Roselle, Linden, Westfield, Cranford, Franklin, New Brunswick, and we go all the way down to Trenton. I've never ever been, I don't think I've ever set foot in Camden, but, Long Branch, Red Bank, and, anyway, I had some lady friends, and we were talking, and she was like, I don't know how the conversation came up, but I just remember this of the conversation. She said, "Oh yeah, Jamaican people don't like black people." I was like, "What?" I didn't understand what she was saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that was the first time I heard that. So, it was like I wanted clarification. I was like, what you saying? Yeah, Jamaican people don't love black people. I mean, like black people, they think we lazy, So that's the first time I ever heard it, because I had never heard nothing bad about Jamaican people or good. You know what I mean? We didn't say Jamaican people. You know what I'm saying? We black people. Even like, going to the Kingdom Hall as a child, or the Jehovah's Witnesses and all that. Like, like some of the what they call friends of the congregation. Some of them would be like Haitian or, Jamaican, you know what I mean? But it was never like they're Jamaican. It was like, she's from Jamaica. She's from Hades. You know what I'm saying? And then we would hear the stories like, she got a beautiful home in Jamaica, such and such. Like, we would hear nothing but, like, good things. So it wasn't until that time that I ever heard, like, anything like, oh, word, you know what I'm saying? And then, when I was about 15, I was working, like, my story is that I was homeschooled since I was 12. So I started working at 12. I was able to work 12. By 15, I was working full time. You know what I mean? By 16, I was working full time in a factory. You know. Anyway, and it was a Jamaican guy. Just like the first story. It was a Jamaican guy. His name was Leslie. You know what I mean? And, I was like, we never talked, but I don't really like mess with anybody. You know what I mean? Unless they got a street vibe. He definitely didn't have a street vibe. He had like how the Jamaican cats in America dressed at the time. It was like the early '80s. So cats was wearing polyester pants, short. They was high waters. He had colorful socks. He had dress like church shoes that you would wear to church. But he was wearing them to work. He was in the warehouse. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, but he was a black man. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, but it was only a few black people. Like, you know what I mean? And some cats I was from Plainfield. I don't remember where Leslie was from. And then it was some cats from New Brunswick. But anyway, so, what's up? We'd be like, what's up and everything. And, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. So we didn't talk much. But like the white people would be like, like saying crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, they wouldn't like really be like racist, but they'll say something like, he ain't got no sense. And, you know what I mean? They say certain things that made me uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, them white people, them Caucasians, they know I was from, I'm Black Power, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a black guy, you know what I'm saying? I ain't no, like, black guy that was raised around white people, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I know they probably would say things about me when I was gone, you know what I'm saying? I've had that done, you know what I mean? So I know I can relate to him, so I have more in common with him than the white folk. So it has never been like, you know what I mean, like a problem to me. And I worked, produced music for Top Notch Records, in Plainfield. They had an artist, Nicky Lee, my man Mickey, you know what I mean, engineered. He showed me the true Jamaican love, like, you know what I mean, like, one thing about Jamaican people is like, it's a meal involved with everything. You know what I'm saying? If you're at the session, engineering or producing a record, there's gonna be some food. Somebody's gonna be sending you a plate of food in your lap. You know what I'm saying? And it's some delicious food. And so I was getting that love, and I get that same love from my brother Damian Rich. The artist out here who we're working to introduce them internationally. That's the goal. So it had never been nothing but love. You know what I'm saying? And so what happened was, like, how, like, I'm a light-skinned black man, right? So it's a million and one reasons not to like me. You know what I'm saying? White people was like, yo, he a nigga, you know what I'm saying? And black people like, yo, he think he better than me, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can't win, you know what I'm saying? Light-skinned girls, and, when they come reach a certain age, how do you like light-skinned guys no more? You know what I mean? So it's like, alright, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay. But Elijah Muhammad said the black American is the most hated man on the planet. You know what I mean? And I bear witness to that. But anyway, I would be like out and about, and people would be looking at me like, you could tell, like, you look at somebody and you could tell if they like, they looking down, like they hate you. You know what I'm saying? You feel the hatred. You know what I mean? I mean, not all the time. Like, that was rare, but it would happen. You know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't pay attention. I don't know. I never paid attention to it. And I didn't need to pay attention to it. But anyway, my man came from, let's say his name is Bob. No, I'm gonna say, let's say his name is Marley. All right. Anyway, he's a deportee. He came, and that's I like. Most of my closest friends is deportees, you know what I'm saying? Because one thing about the deportees is that they don't see me as an American. They see me as a black man because they know what it's like to be black in America. So they know we on the same side. To white people, we all niggas. We all niggas. You know what I mean? So you cats that's living in white neighborhoods from the Caribbean, your neighbors might be here, you know what I mean? But to them, you're a nigga. Black American, nigga. You're all niggas. You know what I'm saying? And so when one of us die in America or whatever, unjustified, black people is marching together. Jamaican, Haitian, Puerto Rican, you know what I mean? All of that. So, but, you know, that's how people see us. You know what I mean? So anyway, my man Marley got deported. You know what I mean? And you know, so he was in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Where I was living in Bluefields at the time. So like I said, when you talk to somebody that deported, they comfortable speaking like, you know what I mean, Queen's English. Well, I wouldn't say Queen's English, but you know, like black vernacular. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, there's, you know, like for some people there's a communication gap, like, you know what I mean, because I'm not very fluent in patois. I can understand what people say, but I don't speak patois a lot. And you know, it's like, because you know, it's like when I first came here, like I was saying, talking patois, and you know, 3 of them, you know what I mean, instead of 3 of them, you know what I'm saying. And what happened was, you know, my son mother was like, "Yo, you sound crazy. You sound like you trying to," you know what I mean. So I was like, all right, I'm going to use my tongue, you know what I mean? And on top of, like, you know, I do a lot of business overseas calls. So it was like, you know, I gotta, you know what I mean, be mindful of what I'm talking about. I don't want to have to be slow and deliberate in my conversations, and you know what I mean? Because I was like saying treat to my brother, like at dinner one day, like, and then my sister who lived out here, her husband was Jamaican. May he rest in peace. He was in, you know, he's from out here in Jamaica. Anyway, and she was like, "Yo," I said something about tree or something, or them, you know what I mean, something, you know, something patois. And she was like, "Kev, you don't," that's my brother named Kev. She was like, "Kev, you don't know what he said, do you?" He was like, "Nah." I was like, "Oh." So from that point on, I said, I'm gonna speak English, you know what I mean. But if I need to talk to like somebody, I could kind of like, you know, communicate, you know what I mean. But anyway, my brother came, you know, Marley from the States. You know, he got caught up in the, you know, selling drugs, like, you know, any black man. He lived in Harlem, 145th, and I think Amsterdam, 146 in Amsterdam. I know that area well. So we, you know what I mean. We had a lot to talk about, you know what I mean. So. Even with Daniel Rich, he's from United Kingdom, you know what I'm saying? But he got deported. You know, if you get a crime, they you know, deport. You know, they deport cats. So anyway, he got deported. So most of my, like, you know what I mean, close circle was deportees actually. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, I have some dear friends that never, you know, been and family members, you know, through my son, that, you know what I mean, have never been, you know, abroad, but you know, so I shouldn't say most, but probably half, you know, are deportees. Make a long story short, you know, we were having a conversation. I was giving him some advice because, you know, I was giving him some advice. You know, a Jew told me, after, you know, because he was going through a car, he was driving taxi. He just started. I remember when he first started driving taxi. He's driving taxi now, but when he first started, he was like, you know, he was looking for somebody to, like, did I know anybody who rent cars? And, you know, so anyway, I introduced him to who I knew. And so anyway, now he's working. It was time for him to buy a car. He wanted to buy a car. So I explained to him what my, you know, what my mentor said, like, never pay on time. Always buy in cash. You get a better deal. You know what I mean? Because when you buy on credit, you know, the interest is what the people make money off. Mostly is the interest. And so I told him that. You know what I mean? So he got, you know, he was like, you know, you know, he was against that. He wanted to get the credit and this and that, and he ended up having trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they came for the car and everything. But anyway, he told me, he said, yo, my mother always told me Black Americans think they better than us, than Jamaicans, or however he said it. But that was the point. And I just, I looked at him, and I never looked at him the same, because I thought we was on the same page. You know what I'm saying? You my brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, I tell you what I would tell my cousin, or my youngins, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I've never heard anything negative about Jamaican people, how to perceive them. You know what I'm saying? Never even said anything, like, you know what I mean? But it's like, there's a vibe like the sisterhood where it's like, you know what I mean? African Americans, so, you know what they say, Black Americans, you know what I mean? So, that does exist, you know what I'm saying? And it's sad, you know what I mean? But, that's their problem, you know what I'm saying? And I wish her the best, I'm not any, better or worse than her, you know what I mean? I wish her the best, But, it's sad because, 41 million, black people in America, you know what I mean? And we travel, you know what I mean? Like, we all over the world, you know what I mean? Especially black men, you know what I mean? Black men with a passport, I got, artists I'm working with right now, Divine Element, I'm working together under the UBU Foundation umbrella. Some of his business partners is flying, they got businesses in Kenya. You know what I mean? That's where I plan to go, to Kenya. You know what I mean? East Africa, and like we all over Ghana, you know what I mean? Like, black people, in Ghana, you know what I mean? Is over there, like, 19 Keys and Shaka Bars, and, these brothers, linking together, got like a community, I think enough for like 200, like the 200 comes to mind. I don't know if it's 200 houses or 200 acres. I don't know what it is, but, pulling money and resource together so that cats can have a spot and that they can go to and thrive, So it's sad. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is, it's like when I started this this broadcast, I asked, for it to come out lovingly, you know what I mean? Because I don't want to, like, be divisive, I don't want to, cause any problems or for any, body anywhere or even create division. I hope it, unites us and has us thinking, at least, using our mind, you know what I'm saying, and not our heart, because, the powers that be, the bankers, the Caucasians, they want us to think that we're different. That's how they mastered us. You know what I'm saying? Like, at one point before the Europeans, Africa wasn't even called Africa. You know what I mean? And one of the largest, empires out there was Mali. We know the story of Mali. Mali has a great history, and it ruled Central Africa. Most Africa, and it was like from the desert down to Nigeria. What is it, the Igbo, and the different tribes there. You know what I mean? They ruled it. That's the same. Mali comes from Timbuktu. You remember Timbuktu? Abu Bakr and his brother Mansa Musa. Abu Bakr was the emperor of Mali, and he, when he was a Mansa, his name was Mansa Q, and he got 2,000 ships and sailed from Africa to America through the Canary stream that, there's a stream that goes from Africa into South America, and it's a stream that it's a way that the Europeans didn't even know. They went through choppy roads and all of that. You know what I mean? We the original people. You know what I mean? Of everything. It's not the first black president and the first black man did this and the black first man. We the first to do everything. There's nothing under the sun, and we the sun, and it's not S-O-N, it's S-U-N. And I just say that to that we gotta focus on the love and hate. Gotta focus on the love and hate. So I love to hear from you. I love you. Let's talk about it in content, in the comments. Leave a comment. Let me know your views. And we can converse. Whether you like it or hate it, thumbs up, thumbs down, to subscribe. You know what I mean? And enjoy this video from the Minister Farrakhan.
So it is not the earring in my ear that makes me special. It's not the sign that I give that makes me special. It's not the way I wear my cap or the colors of my group that makes me what I am. It's not my denomination of Christianity or my school of thought in Islam or even the color of my skin that makes me who I am. It is the nature in which I was created. And so when we look on the outside, we say, oh, I'm black, he's black. Well, he's from Africa, or he's from Mississippi. I'm from Alabama, he's from Georgia. So what? Irrelevant. What is your nature? And brothers, your nature is divine. Because anything that is of God and pertaining to God is divine. So if you tell me I am a child of God, then the preposition of means I am possessed of what God himself is possessed of. I am of God. Therefore, I am divine in my essence. So if you nurture me, a child will grow to full maturity. What will I be if I'm allowed to grow to full maturity mentally? Spiritually, I'll be a reflection of God. Now, do you understand that? Bible says, how can you love God whom you have never seen and hate your brother whom you see every day? Stop right there. Why would the scripture say you love God whom you've not seen? Hate your brother. You know why? Because the same thing you love in God is right there in your brother.
P Funk City G.